Hey, welcome back, everybody. It's time to tee it up with Tom and John as we take a look at the issues driving the course today and the players who are making it all happen. With our host, John Stephens, Tom Johnson. Hey, guys.
Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Oh, crazy. We're running a little late this morning. All my fault here. Got caught up on another issue, but appreciate the patience of everybody as we get this thing launched and going.
Yeah, we're cool. We're cool. How have you been, Tom?
Everything is really good.
I want to know.
Good.
I want to know why you look so cool and you're keeping your shades on inside here.
Well, you know, I played in a charity golf tournament yesterday at Pelican, and I think I left my glasses in the golf cart. So if I want to see you, I have to be in these cool shades.
Okay. Well, how was your game, though?
You know, we did all right. We had a lot of fun. It's something, you know, when
You know what? Whoa. When you ask somebody how they did on the golf course, they said we had a lot of fun. That means you played lousy.
Yeah, that's like asking how does she look and says she's got a good personality.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but we didn't play very well. But I mean, you know, like when you play in those charity golf tournaments, it's tough with me because I'll hit a shot that I would love if I were playing my own ball.
Right.
But everybody thinks it stinks because somebody hits it 100 yards farther.
Oh,
so.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? We might as well bring him in. We're going to talk here and everything, but you know, we have Jeff Boyles with us, who's the fire chief of Newport Beach. And, you know, Jeff's a regular on another radio show, The Poor Man.
Well, we have that in common, Chief. I go on the poor. So Will O'Neill has me sub in for him with The Poor Man, and I always give my my Costa Mesa cannabis report. He likes that, and so we just had 420 yesterday. So I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, Chief, but that's a little bit of a holiday for some people who consume cannabis.
I appreciate you not asking me to comment on that one as I'm sitting here in my uniform in my office right now.
Yeah.
I've been listening to that show almost every morning for the last few years since Will started that back up. I mean, you know, sometimes the timing just doesn't work out, but for the most part, I do hear all of you, even when he has the guest speakers. I'm really interested in what other folks come on and have to say. So I've heard you a couple of times. I think I've done it probably 6 or 8 times now. It's fun.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Man's
good.
an old legend, so you know it just takes me right back to high school whenever I have a conversation with him. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, old K-Rock guy.
Yeah.
So Chief,
You know, I also have to admit, Tom, I was going to say the exact same thing. Whenever somebody says they have fun golfing, one of those guys that likes to try and have fun because I don't shoot very well. My brother has a handicap of 4, so he's really a good golfer. But yeah, you either was hitting them really well, it was terrible, or we had fun, which is code for was just not a good golf day, but a good day out on the course.
Yeah.
You know, Tom, what we should do one of these days is take Dan Stefano and Chief Boyles out, and we'll just play Costa Mesa. We'll have a great time.
Yeah, sure. I'd love to. You know, the one thing about it.
What's that?
I played with Chief Stefano last year in a charity golf tournament, and we weren't the best foursome. It was 4 fire chiefs. And my takeaway, I remember that particular day on, I think it was the 17th or the 18th hole. It was right up towards the end. And Dan's shoe blew out. The sole came apart, and it was pretty funny. So he typically finished the last hole with the sole of his foot, his bare foot hanging out of his shoe.
You know, they don't pay in Costa Mesa quite like they do in Newport Beach. So I know you have new shoes all the time, but work on that, John, will you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we gotta get Dan some new shoes.
New shoes.
We'll do it. GoFundMe.
Yeah, that's right.
Get Dan some new shoes.
Hey, Chief, I have a question for you. We had a lot of rain this winter, lots and lots of rain, which is great, but it also brings probably growth and overgrowth. We're gonna have what kind of fire season we're gonna have this year?
Well, every year we prepare differently based on the drought or the rain or the conditions, and obviously, like you said, I think this year with that historical rain factor, there's probably going to be some historical growth, you know, as a result of it. So it depends on how dry the vegetation becomes over the summer, because it may be overgrown and it may be a lot of extra growth, but maybe we keep a little bit of the residual humidity in the growth, which would be nice.
Okay.
If it dries out quickly, then we're going to be saddled with issues. So it's tough to predict this early in April. Usually it's the summer of it drying out, and then the Santa Ana winds in September, October is really when we typically get hit the hardest.
Okay.
With what we call our fire season. You know, in the last several years, it's been darn near year round. But this year, what used to be the worry of the drought turned into more of the hillsides, mudslides, and flooding issues and things like that. So if it's not one thing, it's another. It seems like.
Hey, so Chief, in Costa Mesa, we have a crew that goes out, and we have we're reimbursed by the state, and they go out on and different firefighters throughout the department go out on wildfires and recently on flooding and all kinds of natural disasters, and that's actually become a pretty big part of the department. Do you guys do the same thing in Newport Beach?
We do, and I always like to talk about how well the fire service does that here in California specifically. We have just a tremendous ability to pull our resources together, and that's really decades of tweaking and readjusting. But it started back kind of in the late 70s, early 80s when departments would start to help each other out. But what we used to do, if you go in the Wayback Machine, there used to be boundary drops. And here's an interesting story. When I was hired in Newport Beach 20 some odd years ago, the old timers then would tell me about how up in the Mariners area, for example, let's say along Irvine Avenue, where one side of the street is Newport Beach and the other side of the street is Costa Mesa, literally, if there was a house on fire across the street, Newport wouldn't go over there, and vice versa. Costa Mesa wouldn't go over. It wasn't their city. It wasn't their boundary. We called them boundary drops.
Right.
Well, and that might be an extreme example, but for the most part, that's just how it was. And now we have what we call auto aid, which is, obviously if you're across the street and you're a Newport Beach fire engine and across the street is Costa Mesa and it's a medical call, a traffic accident, a fire, anything, we're closest. Dispatch centers look at us on the auto vehicle locating systems and they'll just send us. Or send Costa Mesa, vice versa. So our lines are very blurred, as you know. So Huntington Beach, Costa Mesa, Newport Beach, Laguna, we run in and out, try and take care of our own constituents and our own communities with our own resources, obviously. There are times when we just float into each other's cities, help each other out because it's just quicker. Now, fast forward that to the state, we have what you call master mutual aid system, which is where if, down in San Diego or all the way up in Napa County, they're having a big incident, a big fire, they will call down through OES, the Office of Emergency Services. They'll start placing calls down into Southern California. So they'll call the regions, let's say, San Bernardino, Riverside, Orange. Call Orange County, and it'll go through OCFA, and they'll say, hey, Napa County needs 10 fire engines. So what we do is we start pulling it out, and we have a pre-designated list every morning, and say OCFA will pony up 5 of those fire engines, and then the metro cities, we call ourselves the metro cities. So those are all the ones that are not affiliated with OCFA. That's Costa Mesa, Anaheim, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Laguna Beach, Fountain Valley, Orange, Fullerton, and then we'll form up our engines as well. So what you'll see sometimes, I get pictures sent to me once in a while of somebody up on the I-5 freeway, like up in the Grapevine or something. They'll say, hey, I saw a Costa Mesa fire engine and a Huntington Beach and a Fullerton and a Newport Beach. And what was that all about? So we can shuttle our resources up and down the state as needed. And there's a whole processing and reimbursement system where we get reimbursed from the states. It sometimes takes 6-8 months for the state to send us a check, but they'll send it eventually. and then our cities get reimbursed. So it's
Now, do you
pretty
charge them?
phenomenal.
Do you charge them late fees and things like the government does to us?
I wish, but no.
Well, but Tom,
and when the fires do occur, on the years when a lot of fires are occurring and we're sending a lot of folks out from our local agencies,
Sure.
obviously that overtime budget starts to balloon up, and every fire chief gets the same question from the electeds of, hey, why are you spending so much money? And we have to explain that it'll get reimbursed. And for most cities, like at least I know in Newport, the reimbursement check goes right back into the general fund.
Okay.
Our fire department might look like we overspent our budget, but then the general fund will accept the check. And sometimes, depend on the size of your agency. Newport, Costa Mesa, and Huntington are all relatively the same size. We can, on a busy fire season, we can get $1 million or $2 million back from the state for having sent all of our folks out. So it's a sizable chunk of money.
And it's always hard. I mean, I watched. I mean, John's an elected official, and you work for the city. There's a lot of people out there that totally focus on everything you do, looking for the negative all the time. So I'm sure if they get their hands on a budget that's, $1 million over or whatever, they start asking questions, which isn't always fun.
Yeah, I think people are pretty proud really proud, I think, of the work that Newport Beach, Costa Mesa, all the Orange County departments do to help the state, Northern California.
Oh, I agree.
And we and as the chief said, we get fully reimbursed for all the overtime. So we really at the council level and what we hear from the public, we view it as a good thing, being able to contribute to statewide mutual aid.
Oh.
And when it happens here, they show up and help us too. Whether it's Laguna, we had a couple of recent fires, the Laguna Niguel one, and then Emerald Bay as well. So those didn't last too long. They were only a couple of days, but they get in here pretty quick from San Diego and Riverside and San Bernardino and LA. They can merge their reinforcements in pretty quick. But if we had another one down in, say, Silverado, Santiago, and it went on for a week, you start seeing them show up from all over the state.
Sure.
It's pretty impressive. Yeah.
I have a quick question. Can I jump in here, you guys, and throw something out here?
You have the floor.
I have the floor. We had, I think it was the Anaheim police chief on a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how the job of the fire department has changed, because the fire department was created to stop fires. But as homes get better built and there are fewer fires, they've shifted over more to emergency services. Is that true? Is the job of the fire department different than when you started?
It was the police chief that said that, huh?
I think, or I'm sorry, the fire chief in Anaheim.
Oh, I was going to say okay, yeah. I would expect that from a fire chief. I was going to say it's very astute. No, I agree with that. Largely, we're the same but different. So I'll expand on that, and it's not a prepared speech. It's just because I enjoy talking about this sort of thing, and I actually just wrote an article on it for a class that I'm in. Fire service by statute through the states, counties, districts, or municipalities are obligated to provide fire protection for their cities. We're always going to have a fire department, just like you're going to have a law enforcement component as well. So that's why we still, even though the fires are down, you still need to have fire engines with water and hose and people on it and the equipment to fight a fire so that don't lose a whole row of businesses or a whole neighborhood when that does happen. The reality is fires are down. Our fire prevention bureaus have created great legislation through the fire codes and the adoption of more stringent building codes over the years. And we're better at, even the fire crews go out and do business inspections and things like that. And we look for hazards and with new construction and ways that we can mitigate fire. So having said that, we have found through the fire service that since you do have to have infrastructure there, you need to have a fire station and a fire engine, might as well put personnel on there that are trained in rescue services as well. So, we can extricate people from cars, and some departments have hazardous materials or urban search and rescue, but primarily the focus for fire departments, especially here in Orange County, is the fire-based EMS. So we have paramedics on most of our fire engines and ladder trucks. So we have the cardiac monitors and the IVs and the tubes to intubate and things like that. So kind of a rolling rescue toolbox, if you will, not just waiting. Like to say, like the children's book with the, sitting around petting the Dalmatian waiting for a fire. Those days are gone. We're primarily out doing a lot of medical services. Mm-hmm. We're equipped to do a lot of other things, specifically firefighting or any other types of rescues.
Chief, we ran a story in Stu News this morning that you contributed, and it talks about emergency services. This was on your Ops 101 program, which is, I was telling the mayor about it, but it's a training program where you bring in people from the community on a one-day deal and let them do so many different things. But one of the stats of that just stuck out to me is every 50 hours, on the average, you guys are doing a cardiac arrest situation.
Correct. So that one, and it's called Fire Ops.
Right.
Let me do the math here. So let's see, there's 365 days in a year times 24 hours, right?
Right.
Yes.
Divided by 50, 175. I think that breaks down to about 175. I thought it was closer to 200, but if I just were to tell you we do CPR, we have a cardiac arrest 175 times a year, closer to 200 times a year. To me, that doesn't seem overwhelming. To some, it might. When our paramedic was teaching it, he broke it down in hours, and he said on average every 50 hours. That kind of hit me a little differently. That's why I gave you that stat, because I thought, it is interesting. Every 2 days, going through this scenario that we're about to demonstrate right now. So in that particular scenario, and it was based off of one that we see quite often, was a gentleman that was having some chest pain. So our paramedics were assessing him and starting an IV and giving him a little bit of oxygen and some nitroglycerin for his chest pain, and then it just evolved to where he felt woozy, and then he collapsed and he went into cardiac arrest. So we moved him away, obviously, because he was one of our fire captains, and then we put the dummy down there, the CPR dummy, hooked up the cardiac monitor and shocked it and intubated it and pushed medications and did CPR and showed the class participants just how much work goes into a CPR scenario when you're really doing it right.
Right.
And we found that, in conjunction, Costa Mesa and Newport primarily deal with Hogue, and Hogue's just an amazing facility. We found that if we take our time on scene, much to the chagrin of the spouse or family members or people that are watching, but sometimes it takes us 15, 20 minutes. It works better if we're able to get the tube into somebody's throat and start the artificial ventilations, and we're able to get a few rounds of medication for the heart, get some good solid CPR, then we start the transport process. That the survival rate has really increased, and it's here in Orange County, the survival rate, you actually have a cardiac arrest, it's just truly phenomenal compared to the state and the nation. This is the place to have your heart attack if you're
I saw
I'll keep that in mind.
Frankly, I tell people all the time, if you're here from another place and you're in poor health, this is the place to have your heart attack.
So, Chief,
Hogue will take good care of you. We'll take good care of you, and it's not about just surviving it. It's about not about just keeping you alive. It's about actually surviving it and have you walk out of that hospital and still get to go play rounds of golf and do everything else.
Right.
So that's good for the patient. My question is, flipping it on the other side, when you oversee a department that is doing things like saving a life on a cardiac situation, every day or two, when you're extricating people from bad accidents, when you're going to all these different events, how do you mentally get your guys back on track?
What I did today, Tom, quite honestly, is I copied and pasted that link, and I sent it out to the entire department about an hour ago, and we were featured in today's news and like to thank Brian Carter, the paramedic who ran that piece of it, and I'd like to thank the guys who coordinated it, and I'd like to thank the guys that helped out with it. You know, this is a great way to educate our community, and there we are. That's why, you know, I wanted some of the names recognized in the newspaper too, because it's nice. You know, 9 times out of 10, probably 99 out of 100 actually, most public servants for that matter, but especially police and fire, they'll say, I was just doing my job. And they were, but, you know, there's also that component, the psyche part of it, of kind of nice when somebody from the community or the chief reaches out and says, hey, you know, we're just doing your job, but you did a good job, and we appreciate it, and hang in there, because sometimes it's just taxing. Even if, I'll tell you what's interesting is the job itself. I just hit my 29th year last month, so I'm 50. I got hired when I was 21, and now I'm have the vantage point, I guess, if you will, of looking back over my career. When you lose somebody, you know, like a cardiac arrest, and you're doing CPR on them, or they were a drowning victim, or they were in a car accident, it's pretty draining, you know, emotionally. Even
Right.
when you save somebody, and 2, 3, 4 weeks later, they come back to the station and they bring you cookies, and they bring their kids, and they take a picture, and they walk away, that's pretty emotionally draining too,
Yeah, right.
from a high standpoint. So a lot of those calls just really take their toll, and we've been really making a big push lately in the fire service with this behavioral health and mental stability. And I think, you know, my dad's a firefighter, so I was kind of born into it, and I remember his generation, and there was just different ways of coping. You know,
Right.
maybe they drank, maybe they smoked too much, maybe, you know, whatever it is they did. And we're trying to find healthy outlets these days where, you know, whether it's peer counseling, or it's got the emotional support dogs, or exercise, or healthy eating,
Or a surfboard.
What's that?
Or a surfboard. I know that's where you spend some of your time.
I do, you know, and honestly, that's, for me, I look at my phone habitually, probably, I look at it all the time, but even if I'm on my day off and it's just a weekend and I'm just going to a show, or I'm going for a walk, or I'm doing anything, I still look at it every 15 minutes just to check email. It's kind of just, it's almost compulsive. I find that when if I go surfing, I don't have an option. I'm just out there. So, it's an hour of really, truly just checking out. And that's the last thing I check. I zip up my wetsuit, I check my phone, and when I come back in, it's the first thing. Even when I'm wet, I grab my phone. So there is that hour where I'm not.
Hey, Chief, I appreciate you coming on with us this morning. We're gonna jump over and talk about a couple of the passings in town here, but I want to thank you. You know, I love our fire department. You guys do such great work and everything like that, and the community can never say enough. You know, on the thank you side. So we appreciate you coming on, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Chief. And I'm gonna get those. I'm gonna get those shoes for Chief Stefano.
Good talking to you guys.
We'll put those in the budget. All right, great. Thanks, Chief.
All right, take care.
So tough week.
Oh, I know. 2 great people of our community gone in 1 week.
Yes. So Gene Watt, arguably one of the the stalwarts of Newport Beach as far as the environmental community goes. She passed this week at 96. Huge loss. And then over in Costa Mesa, a close, you know, and you say this when people die, oh yeah, he was a good friend of mine. And this was a really good friend of ours, Gordon Boley.
Yes.
And just a great guy, did so much for youth sports.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know Jean, but I've been reading her bios, and I knew of her, of course, and the work that she has done in Newport over many, many decades. And she was 96, you know, and everybody talks about what a great leader she was and how inspirational she was. And she was a city council member for 2 terms back in the 80s and 90s and just kept going. And she died at age 96, and she was still going strong. So, I mean, what a life that she lived. And then, of course, our friend Gordon. He did so much, with Costa Mesa United particularly, and with youth sports. Definitely a friend, and he's got a great legacy with a beautiful family. His grandchildren, including Jake Knapp, who continues to do very well on the Corn Ferry Tour.
So just a quick update on Jake, and I know we gotta roll out of here, but Jake Knapp has been playing for a number of years, and he went up to the Canadian Tour, and he won a couple of times up there, and he got over to the Corn Ferry and then fell off, and now he's back on the Corn Ferry. He's actually in the top 30. I think he's about 25th right now. He's playing this week in spite of Gordon's death. He had a very good first round. I mean, he's like in 17th place. But I think he's ranked 25, and the top 30 at the end of the year get their PGA Tour card. So we very well could be looking at a player on the PGA Tour next year from Costa Mesa, and a kid that can shoot the lights out on a golf course.
Oh, great. Estancia graduate. And
Estancia.
I remember when he and his brother Ryan used to play Little League, and I would umpire those games, and Bob Knapp was the coach, and Bob was a good coach, and he got those kids swinging. So I remember when I umpired their games, if the kids didn't swing, I called a ball because they were swinging at everything. So great sports family, and Gordon is definitely the patriarch of that family.
Sure.
And gave well beyond his family. I mean, if you go around in Costa Mesa to any youth sports event, you will see his fingerprints and in the community and what he's done to enhance youth sports throughout the whole city. Every type of sport, you name it, football, high school, Little League, AYSO, the Pilot Cup. He was there at the Pilot Cup last year. Anything you can think of in terms of youth sport, he's there.
Great man, and we will miss him dearly.
So rest in peace,
Yes.
Gordon Bowley and Gene Watt.
Okay. I think that's about a wrap, John. What do you think?
I think we did it. Yeah.
Hey, Paul, thanks so much. We'll talk to everybody in a couple weeks down the road with another guest here on Tee It Up.
All right.
And that's how we tee it up right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio, streaming live from our studios here at the University of California, Irvine's Beale Applied Innovation Center.